Celaena couldn't focus on her lesson with the Master that night. All day, Ansel's words had been ringing in her ear. She hadn't seen her friend for hours, and dreaded the moment when she'd have to return to her room and face her again. Though Celaena hated to admit it, Ansel's parting claim had felt true. She was spoilt and selfish. The Master snapped his fingers, and Celaena, who was yet again studying an asp, looked up. Though she'd been mirroring the snake's movements, she hadn't noticed it was slowly creeping towards her. She leapt back a few feet, crouching close to the roof's wall, but stopped when she felt the Master's hand on her shoulder. He motioned to leave the snake be and sit beside him on one of the merlons that ran around the roof. Grateful for a break, she hopped up, trying not to glance down at the ground far, far below. Though she was well acquainted with heights and had no problem with balance, sitting on an edge never really felt natural. The Master raised his eyebrows. "Talk," he seemed to say. She tucked her left foot under her right thigh, making sure to keep an eye on the asp, which slithered into the shadows of the roof. But telling him about her fight with Ansel felt so childish, as if the Master of the Silent Assassins would want to hear about a petty squabble. Cicadas buzzed in the trees of the keep, and somewhere in the gardens, a nightingale sang her lament. Talk? Talk about what? She didn't have anything to say, so they sat on the parapets in silence for a while, until even the cicadas went to sleep, and the moon slipped away behind them, and the sky began to brighten. Talk. Talk about what had been haunting her these months, haunting every thought, every dream, every breath. Talk. "I'm scared to go home," she said at last, staring out at the dunes beyond the wall. The pre-dawn light was bright enough for her to see the Master's brows rise. Why?
"Because everything will be different. Everything already is different." I think everything changed when Robin punished me, but some part of me still thinks that the world will go back to the way it was before that night. Before I went to Skulls Bay.
The Master's eyes shone like emeralds. Compassionate, sorrowful.
I'm not sure I want it to go back to the way it was before. And I think that's what scares me the most.
The Master smiled at her reassuringly, then rolled his neck and stretched his arms over his head before standing atop the merlon. Celaena tensed, unsure if she should follow. But the Master didn't look at her as he began a series of movements, graceful and winding, as elegant as a dance and deadly as the asp that lurked on the roof. The asp. Watching the Master, she could see each of the qualities she had copied over the past weeks. The contained power and swiftness, the cunning and the smooth restraint. He went through the motions again, and it took only a glance in her direction to get her on her feet atop the parapet wall. Mindful of her balance, she slowly copied him, her muscles singing with the rightness of the movements. She grinned as night after night of careful observation and mimicry clicked into place. Again and again, the sweep and curve of her arms, the twisting of her torso, even the rhythm of her breathing, again and again, until she became the asp, until the sun broke over the horizon, bathing them in red light. Again and again, until there was nothing left but the master and her as they greeted the new day. An hour after sunup, Celaena crept into her room, bracing herself for another fight, but found Ansel had already gone to the stables.
Huh. Oh.
Since Ansel had abandoned her to do the chores by herself yesterday, Celaena decided to return the favour. She sighed with contentment as she collapsed on top of her bed. She was later awoken by someone shaking her shoulder. Someone who smelled like manure. "It had better be afternoon," Celaena said, rolling onto her stomach and burying her face in her pillow. Ansel chuckled.
Oh, it's nearly dinner. And the stables and pens are in good order. No thanks to you.
"You left me to do it all yesterday," Celaena mumbled.
Yes. Well, I'm sorry.
Celaena peeled her face from the pillow to look at Ansel, who stood over the bed. Ansel twisted her hands. She was wearing her armour again. At the sight of it, Celaena winced as she recalled what she'd said about her friend's homeland. Ansel tucked her red hair behind her ears.
I shouldn't have said those things about you. I don't think you're spoiled or selfish.
Don't worry. I am very much so. But I'm sorry for what I said too. I didn't mean it.
Celaena sat up, and Ansel gave her a weak smile, and nodded, glancing towards the shut door, as if she expected someone to be there.
I have lots of friends here, but you're the first true friend I've had. I'll be sorry to see you go.
I still have 5 days,
Celaena said. Given how popular Ansel was, it was surprising and somewhat a relief to hear that she too also felt alone. Ansel flicked her eyes to the door again. What was she nervous about?
Try to remember me fondly, will you?
I'll try, but it might be hard.
Ansel let out a quiet laugh and took 2 goblets from the table beneath the window.
I brought us some wine.
She handed one to Celaena. Ansel lifted her copper goblet.
To making amends and fond memories.
To being the most fearsome and imposing girls the world has ever seen.
Celaena raised her goblet high before she drank. As she swallowed a large mouthful of wine, she had 2 thoughts. The first was that Ansel's eyes were now filled with unmasked sorrow. The second, which explained the first, was that the wine tasted strange. But Celaena didn't have time to consider what poison it was before she heard her own goblet clatter to the floor, and the world spun and went black.